Hi, we're going to go through this presentation on change over time and natural selection. The theory of evolution says species change over time. This happens when one characteristic helps an animal survive and reproduce, and the gene for that characteristic becomes more prevalent in the species. Charles Darwin was a naturalist who lived in the 1800s. He sailed around the world and studied the way species adapted to their environments. He called this natural selection and proposed the theory of evolution. Natural selection means organisms that are best adapted to an environment survive and reproduce more than others. You can think of this as survival of the fittest. The tallest giraffe or the fastest gazelle lives to reproduce, while shorter or slower animals might not. Darwin proposed that natural selection happens in 4 steps: overproduction, variation, competition, and selection. We will discuss each of these steps in more detail. First, species produce more offspring than can survive. This might happen with individual births, such as fish laying hundreds of eggs at one time. Or think about a litter of puppies or kittens. There may be newborns who don't live, or those who are runts and much weaker than the rest. This also happens over time. Just because an elephant could potentially have a calf every other year doesn't mean, in fact, that she will have one. The concept of variation means that each individual is distinct. The more variety there is in the species, the better the chances that species will survive. And adaptation means that individuals who have a characteristic that increases their survival rate live to reproduce, while those without that adaptation are less likely to survive. Think about these moths, for example. The lighter colored moth has great camouflage on the lighter background. The bird can see the darker moth easier, so more dark moths would get eaten and more light moths would live to reproduce, making more light-colored moths in the next generation. But on the darker background, the darker moths would survive better. So depending on the environment, one adaptation gives individuals an advantage. Competition means that resources are limited. We couldn't have an unlimited number of antelope, for example, because grass on the plains is limited. Organisms must compete for limited resources, and those strong enough to find food, water, and mates will reproduce, while those who have limited success are less likely to breed. Not all individuals survive to become adults and reproduce, and the ones who do survive will pass along their traits to the next generation. This leads to the concept of selection. The stronger, faster, more attractive individuals are the ones most likely to mate and produce offspring. The physical appearance or traits of the creature will be more prevalent in the gene pool, that is, more often represented. So those traits will pass along to the next generation. Eventually, the slower gazelles are gone, and only the faster gazelles survive. In summary, those individuals who have traits that make them stronger will survive, while those who are not well suited to their environment either die or have a limited number of offspring. Evolution occurs when good traits become more common and bad traits are eliminated. One of Darwin's most famous examples has to do with the beaks of various finches. Notice how the beaks are different among all the types here. Those who eat insects, for example, have grasping beaks that allow them to pick up an insect. Those who eat seeds have beaks much more capable of breaking open the seed, like you would with a nutcracker. Meanwhile, birds that eat plants or nectar have longer beaks that allow better probing into the flower or plant. Here are some different bird beaks. Can you match each beak to the food it eats? Then try the simulation at the Beak adaptation link, which I'll post on Google Classroom. Finally, if you want, you could try this experiment at home with whatever you have around the house. Gather up small items like pennies, marbles, toothpicks, rice, beans. I have some seeds on my plate. Then find tools like spoon, chopsticks, tweezers, pliers. Try to pick up each item with each tool. Which tools work better for which items?